Iowa's Caitlin Clark has all the records, but no national championships. Purdue's Zach Edey has been the most dominating college basketball player for the past 2 seasons, but he has nothing to show for it. Final Four weekend is here, and these two must win it all to cement their legacies. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked on Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked on Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, today we're going to talk about Caitlin Clark and Zach Edey. They go legacy hunting this weekend to the Final Four. Of course, we have the latest news around the Big Ten, including LeBron James noticing what Caitlin is doing. Plus, we'll have our weekend picks. We'll find out who the favorites are going to be to win it all. But let's get into it. Caitlin Clark is the best women's basketball player I've ever seen, ever. Now, I say that with all due respect to Cheryl Miller, Rebecca Lobo, Brittany Griner, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, just to name a few. Admittedly, I didn't watch those ladies a lot. Caitlin Clark, just by herself, has me watching more women's basketball than I ever have before, and I've enjoyed every single minute of it. And I'm not the only one. Monday night's Elite Eight matchup versus Angel Reese and LSU was one of the most watched women's basketball games ever. In fact, it was the most watched women's basketball game ever. 12.3 million people tuned into that. By comparison, the NFL, which is the TV ratings king, averaged 11.86 million viewers on its Thursday night Amazon Prime package this year. That means that game Monday night did more than the average every Thursday for Thursday night football. Absolutely remarkable. So the women's game that beat the NFL average by like 500,000 people, to be honest with you. The pressure keeps mounting now on Caitlin Clark as she continues to roll and trying to get a championship under her belt. She's a must-win situation tonight versus a great UConn team, and that pressure will mount even more if she and the Hawkeyes win on Friday. Then they got to face the winner of NC State and number 1 and undefeated South Carolina. The South Carolina team looks really, really good. Clark, of course, out of the Hawkeyes, they made it to the national championship last year. They beat South Carolina last year along the way, as a matter of fact, but they ended up getting blown out by Angel Reese and LSU. So getting close or getting second place really doesn't cut it in the world anymore, right? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because years from now, when I'm doing podcasts or broadcasts to a younger generation, or maybe my future grandchildren, and we talk about Caitlin Clark and how she was the best player I had ever seen, the first question people will ask me is, well, how many championships did she win? And if the answer is 0, it's going to be tough. I mean, there are some girls that have won 4 national championships. It can be an unfair question, though. A championship or no championship, that doesn't allow me to unsee the logo 3-pointers or the 55-foot pass down court by Clark. She's absolutely great at all that stuff. And I've seen a lot of pundits and a lot of former players go on talk shows and studio shows and say she can't be considered the greatest of all time without winning at least 1 title. You got to go out a champion sometime. Fair or unfair, that's what people say. She's got all the scoring records known to mankind, and now she's in a must-win situation on Friday and again on Sunday to cement her legacy as the greatest of all time. Now, on the men's side, Matt Painter has had a lot of really, really good basketball teams at Purdue, but his men's basketball team has woefully underperformed in the month of March over the years during his career. He's been bounced by numerous times by double-digit seeded teams that should not have beaten Purdue. And that goes for his 7'4" big man, Zach Edey, as well, because he's been along for the ride for the past few seasons with Matt Painter and suffered some of these losses. Edey has been the most dominant unstoppable force in college basketball for 2 years now. Now, I'm not sure how his pro career will go moving forward. There are a lot of people that think his lack of perimeter shooting and his lack of perimeter speed will relegate him to a small role or a bench role as a player in the NBA. There are some, though, that think he can become another Shaquille O'Neal or maybe a Yao Ming. We'll have to see about that. Time will tell. But NBA teams are not forcing the ball down on the block anymore. That's just not how they play the game. So given that, and maybe they should. Maybe should get back to doing it. Maybe somebody be successful doing it. But if they don't, we might not see much of Zach Edey on the basketball floor after this weekend. That is why it is imperative for Edey and the Boilermakers to win the whole thing this year. Got to win the whole thing. Purdue has never won a national championship in basketball, even though the fan base is very proud of its program and they like Matt Painter and how things are going. He's a great coach. He really is. But while Edey's number 15 jersey will hang in the rafters at Mackey Arena forever, they don't hang national title banners for coming up close. On paper, the Boilermakers should dispatch of number 11 seed North Carolina State on Saturday. I'm as interested as anybody to see the matchup between Zach Edey and North Carolina State's DJ Burns. Burns and Edey both weigh about 300 pounds, but they look very different size-wise. Burns is more compact and round. He's 8 or 9 inches shorter than Zach Edey. Edey is tall, lanky, and strong. So it'll be a good matchup, a great matchup on the block. That's going to be the key to the whole game right there. And if the Boilers win the play on Monday night against either an Alabama team that is the highest scoring team in the country at 91 points per game, by the way, Purdue's no slouch. They're top 10 at 84 points per game. Or they'll play a UConn team that has probably been the most dominant, complete, and steady team in the country all season long. It's been a long season. This is it right now. This is the Final Four weekend. This is the time for Iowa's Caitlin Clark and Purdue's Zach Edey to put their final stamps on their legacies and their careers in college basketball. Would love to know what you think. Many ways for you to hit me up, of course, on Twitter, X, at Talk Big Ten number 10. Also, comments on YouTube. And don't forget, you can check out our website, talkbig10number10.com. You can go there, get yourself some swag, shirts, hats, pennants from your favorite team, all sorts of fun things around your favorite school, your favorite team. And go ahead and check that out. Plus, all of our podcasts are there in order chronologically, and they're also grouped by teams and schools to make it easy to find. If we're talking about your team mostly that day, it will put the podcast under your particular team. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you're seeing here, or tell your friends who you know are Big Ten fans or alum that they can subscribe. It's very easy. It's just a click. No other information is required, and allows you and me to be back and forth here with this every day. You can follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you always get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. All right, there's a couple of things I want to get to. First of all, LeBron James has taken note of women's basketball and Caitlin Clark and what she is doing. We'll tell you what he had to say about all that. And Ohio State football hires a Michigan man on its staff. Remember, they lost their running backs coach, Tony Alford, to Michigan. Well, Ryan Day has hired a Michigan man on his staff, not for that position, but for another one. We'll have all that and the latest transfer portal news going on in basketball around the Big Ten. It's right here. Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA and the 3% match. And this offer is good again till April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe. Click, simple, done. Subscribe. Let's get our numbers up. We're rolling, thanks to you guys. You can subscribe on YouTube, share, and follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And again, don't forget to check out our website, talkbig10, 10.com. All right, one more thought on Caitlin Clark and her success. Her play on the court has caught the eye of Lakers star LeBron James. He was asked about her. He was asked why women's hoops is getting so much attention. And he said, star power. He said he doesn't think there's much difference between the men's and the women's game when it comes to college basketball. And he went on to say that the sport's popularity comes from the icons like Angel Reese, Juju Watkins, Paige Beckers, and Caitlin Clark in the game. He's absolutely right. He also talked about how young stars in the college level in the women's game, they stay in the college level for many years. You get to be familiar with them and who's on what team and all. Like men's basketball is nothing like that anymore. Like you only have to be 19 to jump to the NBA, but women, they have to turn 22 in the calendar year that they would be drafted or have had exhausted NCAA eligibility before entering the WNBA. That allows players to build something more familiar to the fans. Clark has been with Lisa Bluter at Iowa for 4 years now. You know that. They're familiar. You're familiar. You wouldn't see in the men's basketball, a guy has an awesome freshman year or sophomore year like Caitlin Clark. They go, boom, they'd be gone into the NBA. Well, they got to stay in college a little bit longer for the women, and that's what makes the sport so popular. I was talking to somebody the other day. You know, with the WNBA and the NBA draft coming up, you and I, we could sit here and list more household names from women's basketball that are going to be drafted early in the WNBA than we can from men's basketball going into the NBA. And it's just a fact. So that's the difference between the two sports. They're just kind of two different levels right now. Speaking of basketball, we got some transfer portal news for you here. I'm going to start with Michigan point guard Doug McDaniel. He announced he's transferring to Kansas State. McDaniel entered the portal right after the school fired Juwan Howard. McDaniel led the Wolverines in minutes, points, assists, steals, and that's while missing 6 games due to an academic-related situation, a suspension where he did not travel to road games. He did not play in road games. There was a stretch where he's only playing at home at Chrysler Arena, and he still led the team in all these stats. So he's heading on, going to Kansas State. Meanwhile, in a previous episode of Locked On Big Ten in the last day or two, we talked about Wisconsin basketball transfer AJ Storr. He's testing the NBA waters, and he's also keeping his options open by going into the transfer portal. In case it's not going to work out in the NBA, he can transfer to another school just in case. And he has some schools interested in him, including Illinois. But according to one prep scouting service, he has requested an NIL deal up to $1 million. Yeah, you want me to go play for you? I got to have $1 million. Bill Self and Kansas were interested. Both sides were talking, and they actually offered him $750,000. Said, here it is. Take it or leave it. There's no more. We're not doing anymore. And he and his people rejected it. 22-year-old kid rejected $750,000. Looking for the mill. We'll see who's going to pay it. See if it's out there. See if that's the marketplace out there. So he says, show me the money. And that's where I'll play. More coaching news around Ohio State football. Talked a lot about Ryan Day and his staff here in the offseason. We all mentioned that Tony Alford, the running backs coach, he left to take the same position at rival Michigan. We talked about they just hired a replacement running backs coach from Oregon, but Ryan Day has added another member to his staff. and he has Michigan ties. Tim Drevno. Tim Drevno. You remember that name? Well, he was Jim Harbaugh's original offensive coordinator at Michigan. He was the OG OC. See what I did there? He's coming to Columbus to be an offensive analyst, and he will handle quality control. He had been with offensive coordinator, Buckeyes offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, when Chip Kelly was the coach at UCLA for the past 3 years. So a lot of familiarity back and forth here. Drevno's ties to Harbaugh go further back than Ann Arbor. He was with Harbaugh at Stanford, and he was with Harbaugh in the NFL with the 49ers before joining him at Michigan. Then he ended up going to UCLA, and now he's at Ohio State. So there you have it, all full circle. Hey, by the way, I want to ask you guys, I've asked you before, maybe you're type with the TV on all day. Maybe you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN and all the talking head pundits spewing whatever it is they say. Yeah, and then they get to shouting and talking over each other. Sometimes you got to turn the volume down. Maybe turn it off altogether. Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. It's calm. See? Right now. Am I screaming? No. I'm very enthusiastic. I'm coming at you, but I'm not screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or your free Amazon Fire TV channels app that we talk to you about all the time. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. On Fridays, going into the weekend, we always like to make our picks. We're going to take a look at men's and women's Final Fours. We'll break down the games, the point spreads, the over-under numbers, the numbers for the games, and we'll tell you what Vegas thinks. They've got the latest odds out as to who they think will win it all. We will share that all with you. That is coming up in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. You want to go to some of these games? You want to go to a basketball game at the last second this weekend? You want to go to the opening month of Major League Baseball? All right, cool. Let's all go. Now, are you the guy that's got to get the tickets for you and all your buddies? That could be a hassle. At least it used to be. Check out the Game Time app and get your tickets there. All the stress goes away. All right, you browse through the Game Time app and find the games or the events you want to go to. And it's not just sports, by the way. Concerts, comedy shows, everything is on there. So you do, and then I always like they've got you can see the picture, a view of your view from the seat that you're about to buy a ticket for. Plus, they've got these last minute deals, as I mentioned. Again, if you last minute go to a basketball game here this weekend, save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. 60%. And also, they take all the guesswork out of all this. It's simple. It's a couple of clicks on your phone, and it's right there on your phone. No emails, no paper tickets, nothing like that. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and the redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we want to check out what the latest odds are and the point spreads and everything going on. We always like to make picks on Friday going into the weekend. And, of course, all the women start their Final Four tonight. The men start on Saturday. So let's check all this out. I'm going to put it on screen, full screen for you to take a look at. We'll take a look at these spreads, and I will let you know what I think about all this. So here we go. It is up there. There we go. Let me get rid of this. Sometimes this gets in the way. There we go. All right. The men's national championship odds. Here we go. UConn minus 190. Vegas thinks UConn is winning this whole thing. Everybody else plus money. Purdue at plus 190. Alabama at plus 1,600 and NC State at plus 1,800. Are you feeling lucky with Alabama? Maybe some value there. Lots of value, plus 1,600. So that's how that. Now, head to head, Here's what we think. We got number 11, North Carolina State, taking on number 1 seed Purdue. Purdue is an 8.5-point favorite. The over-under is 145.5. I think Purdue will win this game. I'm not so sure about the 8.5, though. Might go with NC State to keep it closer than 8.5. I definitely like the over 145.5. That is low. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Purdue is a top 10 scoring team in the country. They're gonna put up 80 by themselves. So that's what I think. So take that. I really like the over in that one. And then the night game, 4 seed Alabama versus number 1 seed UConn. UConn, an 11.5-point favorite. Again, that seems like a big number because I know Alabama can score. Can they keep it inside double digits? I think they can. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I do think UConn wins, maybe by, 7, 8, 9. I don't think 11.5. And definitely take the over. Over 160.5. This number flies past that. All right, let's take a look at the women. The national championship odds here on the left. South Carolina, a strong favorite at -200 to win it all. Iowa next at +300, UConn at +700, and NC State +1,200. Nobody's talking about the NC State women. Every time I turn on a TV, a radio, or a podcast, it's South Carolina or Iowa, Caitlin Clark, Beckers at UConn. Nobody's talking about NC State. And again, what a year. NC State and UConn getting both the men's and women's team in the Final Four in the same weekend. That's incredible. All right, so let's look at the individual games here. NC State is a 3 seed for the women. They take on number 1 seed and undefeated South Carolina. South Carolina Lady Gamecocks, 11.5-point favorites. I actually like this a lot. I think they will cover this number. I think the number flies past the 139.5. So take South Carolina to cover the 11.5 in a blowout, and a lot of points in this one. Take the over 139.5. UConn and Iowa. Iowa is a 2.5-point favorite. I do think this game is razor thin going down to the last possession or two. So I like this point spread here. I'll take Iowa. I'll take them to win by 3. So they cover the 2.5. And I do like them to fly past the over on this one. I like some high-scoring games with these women's basketball teams. So take the over 162.5. That's what I think. What do you think? Love to hear from you. That's how we look at the Final Four for both the men's and the women's this weekend. All right? Enjoy them. Enjoy them all. Along the way, if you're sitting there watching these games, you want to hit us up, follow us on Twitter. Let me put those back up here on the screen. You can follow us on Twitter and reach out at Talk Big Ten. Don't forget our website, talkbig1010.com, and comments at YouTube. And if you want to get it going back and forth, we always welcome that as well. Whatever you do, feel free to subscribe. Please just click it. You're subscribed. It's that simple. No other information. It's free. You're in our Big Ten club, our Big Ten family. Tell your friends about us if they're Big Ten alum or family members as well. You can follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app and to get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. I often tell you the audio versions on however you listen to your podcast comes out as soon as 4 a.m. every morning. The videos come out on YouTube at 6 a.m. These are Eastern times. Catch a couple more episodes of Locked On Big Ten. Catch another one right after this one. You can find them all on our website at talkbig10.com. After that, check out our friends from Locked On. They got their first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube called Locked On Sports Today. You can enjoy that as well. We're on there sometimes as well. That'll do it. What an awesome week. Great visit here today. Enjoy the Final Four games. We'll be back on Monday, maybe talking about a women's championship, maybe a Purdue men's championship game coming up. All that right here. Tell your friends about us. Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Talk to you next time.